Hey, how you guys doing? In today's video, I'm going to try and keep this brief, but something that I want to share with you guys today, and I've kind of dripped this in and out, but I want to clarify this a little bit, is that the job that we have as small group leaders is incredibly difficult because we are trying to, as much as possible, we are trying to use our words and our actions and small group time as much as possible to essentially to convince students that the way that they're living is not the best way, but the Jesus way is the best way. And it sounds so beautiful when you say it like that, right? Like I can say that and everyone can nod and agree, but how that actually plays out practically is confusing and frustrating and difficult. And as um, and I want to separate this a little bit because sometimes high schoolers, the high school groups might be a little bit smaller, and so you're like, man, my group's going great. I feel like things are awesome. People are listening. A lot of them want to be there, and that's great. Middle school, some of them want to be there, but just to be disruptive. The groups are large. You feel like you might be losing grasp on your group, and so I do understand that I'm talking to a little bit two different groups at times, and so for a lot of those of you in middle school leaders right now, like especially as we enter, like cold and flu season and just business and things that are going on. Like if your co-leader is gone right now and you have, 15 to 20 students, it can feel like you can feel a little bit lost and a little bit overwhelmed. And so the unfortunate thing is, just like anything in life, there's not like, I don't have magic words, right? Like it's, I'm not going to snap fingers. I'm not going to say something that's so revolutionary that it's like all of a sudden your group is perfect. And while that is the downside of that, of being like, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to train you and help keep you as best as I can and encourage you and be alongside you and support you in any ways that I can. Like people don't change overnight, and that's the hard thing when dealing, especially with middle schoolers, because sometimes what they do can be so frustrating to us. And you're like, man, if you could just see like what I'm telling you, how much better this would make your life. Don't you understand like how this would improve what you're going through? And so here's really what I'd like to share with you guys is there's a couple things that I feel like they're just small things that you guys know, but maybe just these subtle reminders as you enter in, especially you middle school leaders, as you're entering times with your groups where you're like, man, this is really difficult. There's a couple little things I want to give you that you can do to help make your group more impactful. And now, obviously, for some of you, this is going to be easier said than done. And this, you might have seen me do this a time or two, and I try and get in the habit of doing this. And it's a lot easier if I'm stepping into your group one time to do this stuff than if you're with your group week in and week out. But here's a couple of things. One is, first and foremost, you have to set clear expectations. And almost like, it sucks that you have to do this sometimes, but with your middle school students, like set it clear, like here's what's going to happen if you don't. Because yes, sometimes you have to play this bad cop, but here's the thing is students want to grow and learn. And so sometimes if you're strict with them and not mean or loud, but just firm in a way that says like, hey, that behavior is not acceptable here, and here's what's going to happen as a result of that. And if you're like, well, what is going to happen as a result of that? Like, let's figure that out. You can figure that out with me. Like, text me with your co-leader, and we'll figure out what the best course of action is. If a student is disrespectful, mean to another student, not listening, constantly talking, like we can figure out what's best for your age and grade and even that particular student. So first is kind of reminding students on a weekly basis, like, hey, here's the ground rules. But then when you do that, always give them a why. Always tell them, hey, the reason I'm doing this is because of I want you guys to learn and grow. Because I believe that there is something that is going to make your life better, because I believe that it's going to improve your life. And so I know this is annoying and you guys feel like you might do it all the time, but you have to do it like to the point where they become annoyed with it, where you explain, here's the reason that I'm here, because I want you guys to grow and I want you to know Jesus and know there's a better way. Here's the reason that I need you guys to listen. It's not just because I want an obedient group, because people won't feel heard with that. And remind them even too, I know I've said this, but like, hey, if we have a good group tonight, it's dependent on you guys, not me. There's only one of me and a lot of you. So just constantly reminding them of the heart and the why behind things. And again, with 6th and 7th graders, like they might understand when you say that, but they sometimes just lack the self-control to carry that out. So help remind them. Like sometimes actually stop your group and go, I'm sorry, hey, we're not going to be able to focus if you're listening. Or I mean, if you're not listening. or if you're having side conversations. And, like I love one of our leaders last week was like, hey, I love you, but I have to kick you out. Like our group can just not get anything done. And if you send a student outside, like I try and keep my phone on me. If you need help or you send a student outside, just shoot me a text. Like there was a 2 weeks ago where 2 students were outside of a group because they weren't listening and couldn't cooperate, and I got to have really cool conversations with both those students. And I was just like, hey, what's going on? Like, why are you being difficult for your leaders? So. Like I said, I know there's only one of me and I'm doing a lot of stuff on nights. And honestly, I know I'm asking a lot of you guys, like to lead groups this size and do it in a way at which they listen, especially in our current culture, it feels next to impossible at times. And I just want to encourage you guys, and I really mean this, that sometimes we feel every week like we're defeated, and so we don't understand that there's actually small victories that God is doing. Like there are small tweaks and improvements and mindset shifts that are happening in your students that you probably don't get to see. And I'm guilty of the same thing. Like when we had 16 students get baptized at the worship night, I was like, man, like students are changing. They're listening. They're wanting to take next steps of faith. And we have a lot of our students who are serving. And it's hard, when we have a group of 190, sometimes you look at the group and you go like, man, it just feels like chaos. And sometimes in the midst of chaos, we miss what God is doing. And so I just want to encourage you guys, give you some updates. If you've made it this far in the video, some of you clicked out, you're like, you talk too long. But if you made it this far, we're still interviewing people. We have 2 candidates, both of which whom I think are great. And I think could do an awesome job being a middle school director. And I'm constantly having conversation with Jeremiah on how we can make this the best possible program and youth ministry for the amount of students that we have. So hang in there, guys. I know it's been tough, but Christmas is coming up, and hopefully there's a little bit of a break for you guys in there. I hope you guys have great holidays, and I pray for your guys' groups and that things are just powerful and impactful in each and every week, and that you feel like you are making a difference in the lives of these students. So thank you guys so much for what you do. I'll see you tomorrow.